understanding of the Finnish people. So they will celebrate the greyest day on the 14th of November. And the official drink of that is the long drink, which is absolutely grey. Okay, it's the grapefruit tonic drink that they invented for the Olympic Games in the 1952. That they mix it up front in a bottle, in a can, and then they can serve the clients very quickly. And now that's Lonkero, the gray drink, is the official drink of the darkest, grayest day of the year. Okay, so I think that describes Finland.
Oh, that's not fair.
I love being here and I love living here. So no, it's perfect actually. I love that they make a joke from everything and they know how to find the positive things even in the grayest day.
Yeah.
So it's a compliment.
Well, I have with me my my British national drink of tea. So, and as you can see, it's a decent sized cup, so should get me through the webinar. So.
You're well prepared.
Here's hoping that it does anyway. Cool. A few more folk joining, so give it another 1 minute and then we'll kick off. So just for everybody that's joined as an attendee, so it's set up as a Zoom webinar, which means that there's a certain number of panelists, those who you can see in the kind of gallery view in the screen. Everybody who's in as an attendee, you can't share your screen or you can't turn your video on, but you can communicate with the chat function, or you can raise your hand should you need to alert us. So it's just an important little bit of information before we move on with the session, I suppose. Okay, where are we? So we're getting up there. What I'll do is I'll make a start, and then we can hopefully the rest of the registrants can be in time for the main presentation. Let me share my screen and we'll get going then. So welcome to the session, everybody. It's great to finally have another Scottish testing group session going. The last one was actually in May 2018, so it's great to be back up and running. And welcome to this evening. This is the part 1 of our DevOps series that we're going to be running throughout November, and possibly we may run some sessions beyond that as well. Session today is called How Lean Thinking Can Improve Your Delivery Pipeline. I'll just move on to the agenda for today's session. So I'm David Orr, and I'm going to give the kind of welcome and the update just at the start of the session. I will then hand over to our special guest host, Soumya Ramesh, and then we'll move into a presentation which will be delivered by Greg McKenna, Liam Meagher, and myself. And then we've got a Q&A at the end. So hopefully we can get a number of questions coming into the chat function and we can have a really good session at the end. And then there's a little bit of a wrap up as well, just on the next steps ahead of forthcoming events for various communities. Worth mentioning that we are available, or you can follow us on Twitter, it's @ScottishTesting. So if you do want to tweet throughout the event or mention us, that would be a good thing to keep the conversation going. There may be a number of people who haven't been to a Scottish testing group session before, and as we haven't run one for a little while, I thought it would be worth giving just a brief update on the group. So we started out around about 20 years ago, and we were actually the first community here in Scotland. And starting off all those years ago, there wasn't really anything else in the marketplace. It was a big gap to fill. And our aim and our intention as a group was to really promote and share this excellence in systems and software testing throughout Scotland. That's something that we appreciate. We need to keep looking at that. How are we going to evolve the group? How are we going to make it relevant to meet your needs and to meet the needs of the marketplace of today? So that's something we're going to be having a look at over the months ahead. In terms of the way that the group normally runs, we used to, up until 2018 in May, run two half-day events, twice a year, one in Edinburgh and one in Glasgow, normally in the spring and then in the autumn again. Hopefully we will be able to get back to running those types of sessions in due course once we get through the worst of this pandemic and we can return to something like normality. Though the group is based in Scotland and it is primarily aimed at Scottish testers, it is certainly open for anybody who wishes to participate to join, and that's especially true at the moment because any events we will be running will be held virtually. So we would encourage anybody to attend these sessions as it's possible to do so at the moment in time. That's a little bit of a summary about the group. I'll now hand over to Soumya to do the introductions and give a bit of the housekeeping for today's session.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone. I'm Soumya Ramesh. I'm a consultant at 2i Testing. I welcome you all to the session on how lean thinking can improve your delivery pipeline. I will be coordinating the talk today and managing the chat function. So please feel free to add any questions as we go through the presentation. We can come back to them at the end of the session as part of Q&A. In a world which is driven by technology, there's an ever-increasing interest in reducing the time to market. As organizations shift to a culture of intense collaboration and rapid delivery, there's a constant quest to understand and implement DevOps, in essence, achieving more efficient delivery mechanisms. This brings many questions, like how can the collaboration be achieved across the organization and how different functions can work together effectively to deliver quality software. It also brings questions around what does testing look like in an environment with automated build and deployment pipelines? How does the appetite for risk change once a product can be tested in production? And where does testing fit in a DevOps culture? As part of the series, we'll explore some of these aspects. And in this session, we will look at how some of the lean principles can be applied in a DevOps implementation through some case studies, and it'll also involve a demo. Our speakers for today are David Orr, who is a senior consultant with 2i, Greg McKenna, principal consultant with 2i Testing, and Liam Meagher, who is a quality engineer with 2i Testing. With this, I would like to hand over to the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Soumya. Just for everybody's benefit, in case you don't know us, this is a picture of Greg, myself, and Liam, so you can put a name to the face throughout the session as we go through it. In terms of the purpose of this session, what we would really like to do is to start by introducing these quotes from the DevOps Agile Skills Association, as I think these are very relevant to delivering in an Agile or a DevOps environment, and they're also very relevant to what we would like to discuss. So the first quote talks about DevOps as a word we have devised to describe the journey of the IT industry towards the application of lean principles to the delivery of IT services and customer value. That's very, very important to us. So we really think that lean underpins a lot of what is to do well in Agile and DevOps, and that's something that we've included in our daily work and also in the examples that we'll come on to shortly. And the second quote is perhaps slightly more illuminating in that it's saying here that 84% of all digital transformations fail for reasons nothing to do with technology. And the 16% of successful transformations, these all address how people think, interact, collaborate, and work together. So thinking about that slightly differently, what that means is that less than 1 in 5 digital transformations are successful. It's a very low hit rate, and it's actually, I think, very interesting that it's related to the ways of working and how people collaborate to deliver change throughout the value stream and the delivery pipeline. Because normally when you're hearing about DevOps in the marketplace, most of the communications and the updates are about how wonderful the technology is and all the differences it makes. But actually this is indicating that there's an earlier part in the process that you need to get right before you set about introducing the technology to support a good system of work and a good way of working. So that's kind of sets the scene for today. What we would really like to do is to dive a bit more deeply into these quotes and demonstrate through some practical examples and a practical demo how we've been able to use these lean principles to help improve the workload and the system of work for our clients and make a real difference throughout the whole route to live or the delivery pipeline. So we've broken the talk down into a number of sections. The first one that we've just wanted to tell you a little bit about the journey that 2i has been on as an organization over the past sort of 18 months or so. And what we've really started to do is to be able to help our people get better and become more effective in certain areas. And for example, Agile and DevOps being one of those areas. So this slide gives a little bit of an overview of what it's like to work for 2i over these last 18 months. So we decided that we would implement a community of practice that had a number of communities within that. Now you can see that in the top right hand corner of the slide. That's particularly interesting to today's session because Greg and myself happen to be the leads of the Agile and DevOps community. And back at the start of this year, we were thinking about what should we do to make this a really good year for our people who are attending this community so that everybody can make the most of this, make it a really good collaborative learning experience, and we can begin to grow and get better at working in an Agile or DevOps environment. To kind of set the scene a little bit for you, the team that we've got within 2i have got a broad range of experience in terms of technical expertise and also in terms of practical expertise within the likes of Agile and DevOps. There's a lot of good theoretical understanding, but in some aspects for people, it's less of a practical knowledge. So we really needed to find a way that kind of started off the year in such a way that it could work reasonably well for everybody in terms of how we can best prepare our people to work in an Agile or DevOps environment. So what we decided to do was to focus first on the principles from lean management. So we started to have conversations and meetings around, how do you identify value for your customers and your end users? What does the value stream look like? So how do you get the change or your ideas into production? What does that sequence of activities look like and how can you improve that? How can you create the left to right flow that you require to make an Agile delivery or a DevOps delivery successful? What does that look like? Establishing pull rather than push. I think that's quite important because then you're able to look at pulling based on demand as opposed to pushing things onto your customers. So it's a really powerful transition that can bring. And then the most important thing we've found is the seeking perfection. It's that culture of ongoing process improvement. Once we got ourselves into thinking about these types of things, we then took a deeper dive into the wastes of software development. So things like what's the impact of having too many features in the code base? What does that mean from a maintainability perspective? What does that mean in terms of maintaining that code base going forward, trying to keep that under control and tidy rather than allowing it to become overly populated with features and messy that can make things harder to deliver other change through at a later point in time. So these were the types of things that we started to talk a lot more about, and we were able to take these examples away from the sessions that we had internally and start to apply them on client sites. And then we would come back to the group and update ourselves on how we got on, and everybody could start to learn and improve in these aspects. So it really has been a very collaborative experience, and it's also been an experience that's allowed our team to grow and to make a difference to our clients when we've been out there in our daily work. So I suppose to summarize what we've been able to do here is we've switched the focus a little bit to really think about how we can deliver what matters to the customers and then users of our clients, and to be able to do that more efficiently and effectively.
Thank you, David. So how can you improve your system work through value stream mapping? David was talking about, we've been learning about value stream mapping in our journey in 2i, and value stream mapping effectively is how you deliver and not what you deliver. In this example, we're engaged by a large client to identify the root cause of release delays impacting the release trains. It was a large delivery with digital elements and existing elements in their architecture, and a lot of integrated applications for the end-to-end journeys and processing. The client was having difficulty identifying the issues, enabling the release of the solution. So as we engaged with the leadership team to better understand the challenges, we were presented with the following positions in the release. It was a hybrid delivery, upfront project design, broken down and delivered by multiple feature teams in Scrum. The solution was then integrated and submitted for release testing. As you can see in our burn down in step 1, work was tracking down until it reached SIT, and then the work items increased again. So we decided to undertake a value stream mapping exercise to identify the source of the issues. Through this, we discovered the release scope was continually being increased throughout the release journey. As a result of this, the SIT teams were fully utilised, servicing the test and the release test stage, and there was no bandwidth available to risk and impact assess at the design stage and conduct the right test planning analysis in line with the development work. With these individual issues all impacting the release in parallel, it's effectively generating increased work items and defects at the release test stage. And due to that lack of early engagement, the handle on delays, the spike was being generated by a combination of invalid defects and genuine queries as well, due to that no early engagement. There was around about 1,600 defects, and only around half of those are attributable code. The rest was non-value add work, issues that could be identified through better engagement, collaboration, and effectively all teams working together early in the delivery lifecycle. So through our analysis, our recommendations were reduce that handoff and non-value add work, bring those integration teams closer together to work with the feature development teams to better understand the risk early and identify the issues that were impacting the pipeline and delivery of the work, and start to manage the release and not projects. So many dependencies across large enterprise release when you're working in a hybrid delivery model. The release train is only ever as fast as its slowest project. So to keep the scope focused and getting value delivered to your customers, you need to remove the wasted effort spent on overloading releases. So the resulting lesson learned for us was taking the time to map your value streams as an essential activity to conduct before you start to implement DevOps practices. By starting from a baseline of process efficiency, you can move to remove non-value adding tasks, start to automate non-value but essential tasks, and allow you to start focusing on delivering more value-adding tasks for your customers. So in the second scenario, we'll look at how to identify and remove constraints from your delivery pipeline. Again, this example, it was a pipeline challenge we were faced with. This scenario, all delivery was channeled through one route to live. This was causing delays and additional cost. As regardless of the size of the change, it was ultimately being delivered in a serial manner and impacted incurred costs and delays for any break in the chain of delivery effectively. So again, we conducted a risk assessment across the portfolios, and we identified the kind of 3 categories of change that were in play. Change type 1, this was change ring-fenced to a product, no impact to upstream or downstream systems, fairly ring-fenced in terms of risk. Change type 2, dependent change across systems in a domain, impacts across touch points, but again across a small set of applications with no wider impact to the overall end-to-end solutions. And then change type 3 was your large enterprise level change that we're all used to. Programs of work, impacts across multiple applications that effectively need to be delivered to deliver an end-to-end system to your customers. So again, to solve these challenges, we looked at implementing routes to live based on risk and impact footprint of change, as you can see in this diagram. So change type 1 was your light footprint change. That could effectively go through less stages, less hops. We could go through dev and sprint testing, staging and live, and look to retrofit that change into the large environment so it was in play for your other types of testing for the larger releases. Change type 2, start to think about utilising service virtualization to allow development to happen without dependencies on parallel development work being available at the same time. Again, look to use some of that capability for your in-sprint testing. And when you have all components available, deliver an integration test stage again, and be able to promote staging and then production, a reduced set of hops again across environments, but still managing risk and using service virtualization to accelerate your process. Finally, for change type 3, that process predominantly still had to go through the series of stages that we've called out in this diagram, but it could also take advantage of some of the capabilities of the service virtualization to accelerate some of that early testing, but would also remove some of the congestion in the pipeline. So you had the ability to start to progress large change in the queue and move that faster. The recommendation removed the largest constraint, which is environment capacity. Change would have a risk-based test approach applied. So again, able to make these decisions early about how to move change to production with the most efficient process as opposed to the process and system of work that was forced in front of you effectively. This unblocked the release delivery pipeline and removed the pipeline blockers for those large change deliveries. So again, the resulting lesson learned for us was By identifying and addressing the most significant constraint, we unlock the ability to deliver faster value to the customers. The solution seemed obvious when you look at it, but due to no individual ownership of the route to live, the kind of information was buried across silos. So by highlighting the constraint and the cost at the enterprise level, the impact becomes clear, and the value of investing to remove the constraint was better understood. So how can you make the tooling and automation work for you? In this scenario, we were working with a software company that operated a software factory model, and they had quality issues in their products and also had aggressive delivery timescales for their customers. They again had difficulty identifying and elevating the constraints in their delivery pipeline. So as part of the 2i's kind of service offerings, we have an Azure risk mitigation framework, which delivers a risk assessment, which effectively we deploy the value stream mapping process through for this particular client. Through that, we identified that this client had the tools and the ambition, but not necessarily the expertise to really meet their Agile and DevOps ambitions. So we mapped that to our approach, and we identified key initiatives that we could build testing and QA into the solution delivery process. And it wasn't just a case of giving over initiatives and walking away. It was like we actually embedded ourselves in the teams to implement those initiatives and actually bring them to life and show the value they could deliver for the company and for their customers effectively. So some of the key challenges we identified were, and opportunities, were that the architecture and the platform for the system under test were being redesigned from the ground up with a shared service architecture. So that gave us some opportunity to deliver a test approach focused at different layers of the system. The current approach as well was really about acceptance tests at the end of the sprint with no automation. So the test team in place was stretched across multiple teams for testing. So it was more best endeavours than a real risk-based test coverage that was in place. So Azure DevOps is already in play for this particular client, and this allowed us to effectively identify test approach using the tooling that we could utilise quickly without significant investment to really start to implement better test stages across the pipeline. So the team configured Azure DevOps, pulled plugins down from the marketplace, and as you can see from this diagram, started to embed these tools into each stage of the pipeline to get faster test and feedback. So for the system test, we started to use Postman for those open the new APIs that were open. We could effectively test at that lower level, and we brought in Cypress.io as well for the UI testing, which sat well with the web developers as well. We could use a common language there and start to move away from the kind of exploratory testing that was best endeavours and look to more test charter model to start really understanding what needed to be tested early in the process. Accessibility was a risk for this client as well, so the team looked at implementing Lighthouse to start giving us that fast feedback in terms of any obvious accessibility issues in the process, and also bring in OWASP as well to highlight any of those security issues that could be addressed quickly during product development as opposed to issues that were identified at the end stage of the process traditionally. And also through reuse of the Postman tests, the team could also look at load testing and start to use the K6 capability as well to really start to exercise the scaling targets for the application as well. And finally, we used the Microsoft test and feedback tool, and we worked with the product owners, the testers, and the business users to move away from kind of manual tests that were tracked in Excel, very hard to track and manage to get back into the process, and they started to do their testing, exploratory testing through the MS test and feedback tool, record the sessions, play that back into the tool set, and we can start to increase the test coverage to reflect how the business and how the users utilise the product set. So what we'll do next is Liam will take you through a demo of this product, but what we learned quickly by implementing this, that without significant investment, we could really take what was the effort was taking weeks and move that to days and hours. We didn't spend, as I say, a significant investment in tooling. We just used the capabilities that was there and implemented in the right way to really optimize the value stream and automate the work that impacted the team in delivery. So we work to automate away the tasks that were causing the most pain. I'll hand over to Liam now, and he'll provide you a demonstration of the pipeline.
Thanks, Greg. So let me just share my screen real quick, and I'll run you through a bit more in detail about the pipeline and how we used it. I'll read my emails. So a pipeline is essentially a tool that enables continuous integration and development, so that when new changes are pushed to the system, the pipeline will run through all the tests you set up inside it. And then from the test results at the end, we can automatically decide and determine if the changes have had a negative impact on the system. And if they have, we can throw them out, or if they haven't, we can accept the changes and let them go through. Of course, you can also run the pipeline manually, which I'll do now. Assuming I've set everything up right, it should kick off. It's being queued. Essentially what this is just a log of the steps as the pipeline runs through, going through each tool, which is very useful for debugging in case anything goes wrong in the pipeline. It's just stepping through, going to the GitHub where the tests are stored, pulling them down, and running through each step. You can see. I'll just leave that running in the background because there's not too much to see. I'll go through some of the tools we used. So PyTest was our unit testing framework we used, and that's just because we were working in Python. Obviously, any unit testing framework will do. As Greg said, Lighthouse was our accessibility testing tool by Google. And so what you'll do is provide a URL that you want to target, and then set some audit scores. So Google has a large list of tests that will run against it, and these are set. You set the scores you expect to get from those tests back. Postman was our API testing tool. Newman is just, as it says, a companion app for Postman, so it works very nicely with Azure DevOps. I'll quickly show you what Postman looks like if you haven't seen it before. So what you do is provide it a URL of the API you want to target, fill in your authorization, the headers, and the body, and then you can send that off and hopefully get a response back in some form. So the one I've got here returns a big JSON response. I've added some errors into this body, so we should get errors back. And then you can write tests for it that will parse through the response and make sure that you're getting exactly what you think you should be getting. K6 is our performance testing tool. So you can set right in the command line here how many virtual users and how many seconds you want it to run for. So you set it for 10 to 5 seconds, and that will bombard the API endpoint. We were able to make use of an open source tool that converted our Postman scripts into K6 scripts, and that saved us a lot of time, not having to reduplicate the effort creating tests to target API. Sauce Labs is a compatibility testing tool that has many different variations of browsers and operating systems you can use. It also has a nice dashboard if it loads. It doesn't look like it will, but that just shows you a long list of tests that have been run along with the operating system and browser it was set to. You can also, change screen size, resolution, stuff like that as well. OWASP is our security testing tool. So we've got a long mumbo jumbo in here where we're setting it up, but really we're just targeting, a URL here, setting it to do a full scan of the website, and that will go through, spider it, and find basic security vulnerabilities. And that just is a really detailed and nice report at the end, saying what it is, where it found it, and some possible solutions. And then last but not least, we use Cypress for a UI functional testing tool. We just got this up here. What this file creator step is it's taking a variable from the pipeline we set, which is the URL we want to target, and putting that in a location that Cypress can access. And when the tests start running, Cypress can read that file and know what URL to target. And that way you can change the URL directly from the pipeline to target different systems without having to change it within the actual code itself. I've got a wee video of Cypress lined up here running through, and it goes by pretty quick. What it does is you can go through, enter in text, and click buttons, and you can see on the left-hand side a list of the steps it goes through. We've got the username input box, typed in the email, type in the password, and go. And then what it will do is you can set some assertions as it runs to make sure, for example, that the URL is correct or the UI is displaying correctly. Let's let this load. As it loads, like you can see on here, it's clicked a button, and while the page is loading, it's saying, well, we're expecting the URL to be this. Once the site fully loads, it makes that search and it's clicking another button and doing the same thing again. Let's pause that there because you've got the, hopefully got the general idea. Once all the tests have been run, got some tidy up steps at the end, so we're moving all the results files into a single folder, and that lets us publish them to Azure DevOps. So what all these tools do is they produce a JUnit XML format for the test results. So they're all in the same format, and that allows Azure DevOps to consume the test results, and on the final screen where it displays the results of the pipeline run, it can display a nice dashboard of all the tests and whether they passed or failed. And our final step is just taking those same files and storing them and archiving them just so we have them to reference later on. We've also done, and we have noticed, is we're running most of these tools within Docker. So if you don't know Docker, it's a container tool that can run other software inside it. And the reason for this is that it takes the requirements to run this pipeline, all these tools, down from having to have each individual tool installed. It's just requiring Docker, and that means the pipeline is much more portable from system to system. Once the run is complete, you'll get taken to this screen, which is sort of the results screen. These errors are just saying, well, there's some test failures, which is no big deal. If I go into the test section, it gives you a breakdown of all the results, like I said, percentage, how long it took to run. You can see down here all the test results. As Greg said, this took slightly over 5 minutes, when before to run all these tests, it was taking them upwards of 5 days to run. It's also, this is Azure DevOps quite nice because it can present the Lighthouse results directly in it. So it does other stuff, but we're primarily looking at accessibility testing. And what this does down here, show you the tests that failed, and you can read a breakdown, and it will give you a list of all the elements on the page that have these errors and how to fix them. So shows you what ones have run, what ones it didn't, and what ones you should maybe look to manually test. And finally, going to here, we can see a list of all the archive files we got and all the files from the test results. So that's the pipeline demo done. So I'll hand back to David now.
Thank you very much, Liam. That was really good to see. So I'm just going to bring back the presentation now, and we'll bring everything to a bit of a close. So yes, in terms of bringing this all together, then at the start of the session, we kind of introduced these quotes from the DevOps Agile Skills Association, and we talked about how important it was for the teams to work well together, to collaborate, and to have a really good system of work throughout their delivery pipeline. And we mentioned this metric, the 16% of successful transformations are the ones who are able to do that and work in that better way. So in terms of the principles that we feel, based on our experience, could help your organization to be an organization that transforms in this kind of a way, we think that the principles are as follows. So it's a lot more of a focus on the customer, also on that delivery pipeline, knowing what your value stream is and how you can identify the constraints and the problems there. Once you've got that picture, it's a very good place to be, to know how you deliver change and to know those constraints. It allows you to then focus on those, elevate them, and start to either manage those constraints or even better, remove them from the system of work. So it really starts to optimize things. And all of this kind of stuff can be done without the introduction of any new tools or technologies. So this is a really good starting point to do these two things first. And that's what we found when we've gone into a number of clients and they've maybe had a problem of some description that they've asked us to help them with, is to first find out what they do, elevate those problems, start removing them. And at that point, and like you've seen in the demo and the explanation description that Greg had given, what you're able to do is to look at bringing in the automation that provides further support and allows you to optimize your system of work even more. And perhaps the most important aspect of all of this for any clients that we work with or for ourselves is it's really about, a lot of this is about the kind of experimentation, the seeking perfection, just being willing to try things out and continuously improve and work as a whole team and just everybody learn and improve together. And that's something that we've found really valuable throughout the community of practice sessions and then when we've been working with our clients as well. So I think in summary to all of this, what we're really saying here is let's get the foundations in place, get a really good culture, a good system of work in place, where you can then start to think about bringing in the better tooling, the automation, the technology that will really take you towards those digital transformation agenda that you've got as a client or as any organization who's wanting to move forward into more of an agile or a DevOps way of working. Give you a little bit of information about 2i as a company. So for those of you who haven't heard about us, we are a company that's based in the United Kingdom. We're a software and quality assurance consultancy. We have a variety of different clients in the public and private sector, financial sector. We are based locally here in Scotland. Head office is situated in the centre of Edinburgh. And one of the good things about 2i is that we are active participants in various software testing and development communities throughout the UK. And we have actually sponsored a number of events for both the Scottish Testing Group and the Ministry of Testing in the past, and we would endeavour to continue doing that in the future, and would very much look to be actively participating in person at conferences and similar events as soon as it's practically possible to do that. In terms of our aim as an organisation, it's fairly a simple one, and it's really to help our clients remove risks from their delivery pipeline. And the way that we tend to do that is by using the Azure risk mitigation framework, which all of the examples we've talked about today are driven out through the Azure RMF processes. And Greg gave a bit more of a detailed view of how that works and what that looks like. If you want to find out a little bit more about 2i, you can do so on our website, which is 2itesting.com, and we're also available on Twitter as well. Finally, I'd just like to say a big thank you to everybody who supported the event, the preparations for it, and also presented some things today, and also to everybody who's made the time to attend and support the group. Hopefully this will allow us to look at successfully rebooting and relaunching with more bigger and better events over the months ahead. At this point, I'll now hand back to Soumya, who will lead the Q&A for us. Over to you, Soumya.
Thank you, David. To begin the Q&A session, I have a question for Greg. How was your experience, Greg, in all your case studies of engaging with stakeholders and team members, as it's one of the essential aspects to achieving successful DevOps implementation? And what would be a suggestion to approach achieving that buy-in from the immediate team and the stakeholders?
Thanks, Soumya. Yeah, I think that the key part is speaking the right language in the context for who you're speaking to. I think, as David said, a big lesson learned as we went through this is finding process efficiencies. If you're in delivery day in, day out, you don't often question the delivery process you're in. Agile should let you do that when you start to do retrospectives, etc. But especially in some of the larger clients, it's really difficult when you're at that scale. So when we're speaking to leadership, it's about efficiencies in the process, the cost savings, optimization, which are attractive to them. How do we make their delivery operating model more efficient? For people on the ground, it's making their life better. How do we remove constraints that are probably invisible to people at the higher level, but they're actually making their lives more difficult? So that's why I think value stream mapping is so powerful, because when you take the time to do it, it's not something you tend to do every day when you're trying to get a product to your customers, but taking the time to invest in it as an organisation, you start to really see, well, I might be automating the wrong processes just now because they're not efficient, but I've looked at automation before I've looked at actually what is my system of work, what's my process. So by doing that, I think it's just a case of being able to speak the right language to the right people that need to buy into that process and invest in that process to effectively see the value that we believe can be delivered by improving it.
Thank you, Greg. Perhaps touched upon this, but we do have a question from Craig Lynch. It says, have you got any good tips or references for creating value stream maps?
Yeah, I think we reference books such as the kind of DevOps handbook and things like that as well have been hugely valuable to tell us what the insight is that we can get from that. I think, David, you've probably been a big scholar of value stream mapping. You've got some key resources that you think we should reference as well.
Yeah, I've seen some good ones on Pluralsight when I've been in there. There's a number of other books. There's one called This is Lean, which is just a general book about Lean that has a lot of good stuff about the value stream mapping and how you can implement that in various industries, such as the healthcare industry. That one was very good off the top of my head. There's the Safe Distilled book, because I've been reading that recently. It's also got a number of good processes and practices that give you an overview of value stream mapping. It's really anything that you can do to find out how you can work together to map out exactly how you deliver change is really quite helpful. But yeah, those are the types of resources. There's a number of websites as well that could potentially be looked at. There is actually one called, I think it's thisislean.com or .org, which is similarly linked to that book I mentioned. There's probably a number of other ones out there as well, but I can't remember them all off the top of my head. But if I can provide further resources, if anybody wants to touch base on LinkedIn or Twitter, I'm happy to provide a more detailed list of things.
David, if you don't mind, maybe I'll jump in here as well, because we have been doing a lot of value stream mapping exercises with our clients and also with our previous work. So that one I learned as part of the Lean Six Sigma package as a green belt. And it's actually, on one hand, you can drive it as an extremely heavy workshop, like 4 days workshop with a lot of sticky notes, with bringing people together with a giant wall and a giant piece of paper, mapping your actual process, identifying systematically all the non-value added parts and the waste and all the loopbacks and everything like that. And coming up with improvement ideas. One of our biggest process was something like a 6 months acceptance testing process, captured in 170 something sticky notes. So it was like 16 meters of paper on the wall. And we were able to push that down, actually, with redesigning the process. We pushed that down to 3 days. So from 6 months to 3 days. And with all the acceptance tests and all the tooling, what you also presented here. So utilizing the hell of those DevOps techniques and automation, of course. Yeah, but if you ask for tool, sticky note and the giant piece of paper. And if these days it's Miro board and the virtual life.
Yeah, I noticed that you've actually been doing a similar exercise to that using Miro. Actually, Szilard, you've been doing that at some of the conferences recently. Do you want to maybe mention anything more about that kind of pipeline game?
Oh, okay. Yeah, last week on the HUSTEF conference, the Hungarian Software Testing Forum conference, I had a workshop, a tutorial with the pipeline game. The card game was originally designed by Emily Bachet, and she did that for teaching CI/CD. And funny, I should be able to catch that card here. Sorry. So where's the camera? So pipeline game. This is originally done by Pragma, and this is how to actually simulate gamification-wise building your pipeline. And actually your pipeline is a value stream as well, right? So actually very concrete question. But I move this to a Miro board as well, so can do the whole session in a virtual piece, in remote exercise, and we did that with a big class of people enjoyably. And the other card game I used for that was the Ministry of Testing, TestSphere.
Thanks very much.
Sue is nodding, so yeah, you have connections there.
That's brilliant. Back to you, Soumya, if there are any more questions.
Yes, we do have a few. Thanks very much, everyone. We have a question from Ali Hill. At the beginning of the talk, you mentioned that 84% of digital transformations fail. How would you define a digital transformation success?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think it's for me, it's when you're able to successfully deliver the change through the delivery pipeline or the value stream quickly and effectively and in the shortest sustainable lead time, that to me is what would be a success for your organization. It might not be possible for every organization to deliver change through the delivery pipeline in a matter of minutes or hours or days, but even if you can get that down to being able to release predictably every 1 month or every 3 months, that would be a good success for some of the larger enterprise clients, certainly that we work with. That would be a big success for some of these financial services clients and also for some of the larger clients in the public sector. So for me, it's all about finding ways to deliver the change much more quickly, efficiently and effectively in that shortest sustainable lead time as the likes of the SAFE principles. That to me would be a success, but I'm sure there's many variations of what that might look like.
Thank you, David. Next question is from Kevin Hughes. What size of team do you have at 2i, and what is the structure of these teams per project?
So in terms of the organization, we've got around about 50 permanent members of staff, and we've got a number of associates. We've got around about 120 people in total working for us across a relatively small number of clients. We've got 3 large clients, and then there's a number of smaller clients as well. So that's the total number of people. It varies from client to client how we work. It really depends on what that client chooses to do. So we've got a mixture of things where it's much more focused in quality engineering, more DevOps focused, and then we've got a number of hybrid type deliveries whereby it's a bit of it's agile development, but topped and tailed with some waterfall type activities, which is quite common for the larger clients that we work with. One thing that we do see at the moment with these clients is that they're on a bit of a journey where they're trying to become clients operate more in the way that it's described in the likes of the SAFE literature. They're trying to move to that way of working so that they're containing everything within a release, and they're getting away from the kind of big heavyweight governance that kind of slows them from being able to deliver change quickly within a few months. Sometimes they're taking quite a long time to just get to the point where they're actually starting to deliver the change. There's a lot of waste at the start of the process, or indeed at the end of the process. So that is a key thing that we're seeing, is how do we help these clients move towards more of a safe type ways of working. I hope that answers the questions. In terms of I suppose in terms of the community of practice, there was those 5 communities there, so that there's of the 50 permanent members of staff, they're kind of split across a number of communities that are of interest to them. So some of them are very popular, and more or less everybody would be regularly attending and feeding into, and some of them are less popular. But that is a kind of overview of roughly how we're structured. But all of the work that we tend to do on a day-to-day basis is with a variety of different clients in the financial services or the public sector.
Thank you, David. Next question is from Arnie Boyle. I hope that I got the name right. The question is, how do you work around systems where multi-factor authentication is needed as part of the authentication effort? For example, how would you get the authorization token to do your Postman API test for authenticated APIs?
Yes, I'll answer that one. So there's a few ways to do it, and it's normally going to depend on how it's been set up. So at one client, you could manually send a request to the authentication server, and with the login details, and that will, the response will contain the token you need, and you can save that and then use that for future requests. Or another client, on their test environment, they set up a token that expired every 30 days. So I could just keep reusing that one for my tests, and then every so often I'll update it. Yeah, there's multiple ways around it. It's just going to depend on the situation you find yourself in.
Thank you, Liam. I have the next question from Ali Hill. How did you begin using value stream mapping in practice with customers or clients? Did you undergo internal training or workshops first?
It's a combination of, I think, as David says, us learning the process, doing it accidentally is some things as well. But it took a while to realise that's what we were actually doing. It was process analysis, trying to figure out where are the problems, where are the bottlenecks in this process, and then using that to say, all right, it's value stream mapping. I think as we talked about there, we understood it come from kind of the Lean Six Sigma as well, and we started to get a better view. There's a process here that we understand it better, we can utilise it. I think in terms of when it comes to clients, it's probably baked into our Azure RMF process, but it's part of what we do. We're going to try and understand the problem and we'll internally pull that together, trying to pull together the process. I think the scale that we've probably talked about in some of the other experiences where it's been across 16 pages, it's not been that type of scope for us. It's certainly been a war room model and pull those post-its together and say, why is that taking so long? And then take that back to the client in terms of findings. I think the next stage in terms of the engineering process as well is part of a different section of what we do our Azure RMF model, is where we probably start getting into the nuts and the bolts of how we put this back together. What I will say is we're still on a learning journey as well about value stream mapping and what it means. Hence why we're telling a story from a position of learning as well as experience. It just gave us such a different lens in what we're looking at in terms of identifying problems, and we've got much more to learn as well in terms of how we probably can unlock more value for customers.
Thanks, Greg. The next question from S. Allison. In the demo, the performance test was designed to run for 5 minutes. When it comes to pipelines, is it advisable to run short, sharp tests on independent APIs as opposed to longer end-to-end 1 hour runs, for example?
So yeah, I think in this situation, you'd probably want to have different pipelines up for different stages of the release. So for just pull requests, making sure the merges happen, you maybe want to run your shorter tests, make sure nothing's immediately broken. And then for full deployments, you want to run the full pipeline with everything involved to make sure that nothing could go wrong. So you'll want to tweak it for the situation you find yourself in.
Thank you, Liam. I believe we've come to the end of the list of questions. If there are any last minute questions, please feel free to post it just now.
Can I ask a question? Because
Yes.
I've just found that you can't actually, as a panelist, it doesn't seem like it lets you actually post a question. I was just wondering, with such a disparate set of products that you've pulled together into the pipeline, was there one that was more problematic than any of the others, or did they all behave nicely as part of the pipeline?
I think they all behave pretty nicely. So we were careful with choosing our tools and chose normally open source ones where we could, ones that were free, and ones that could work with Docker. And so that alleviated most of the issues. When we were initially setting up the pipeline at the client, we had issues with them saying, well, we can't get permission to install all these tools, or these ones aren't working with their system. So Docker was our way around that, and that made everything a lot simpler.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Any other questions? Okay, if not, I will just got a couple more slides I wanted to present just to give us a bit of an overview of the next steps and some things that are coming up over the next kind of couple of weeks, which is going to be hopefully be very good. Some very good sessions. So some of the next steps for the Scottish testing group. I think it's important to recap on the fact that we hadn't run a session prior to today for a couple of years. So this was really a kind of proof of concept, a pilot to hopefully get us going. So what I'm now looking to do is to further build on the survey that we sent out to our mailing list back in the summertime, where we asked, how best could we help you? What would be good for you as our community? And the things that came out well were DevOps, continuous testing with the top scoring. There's a bit about test techniques, and then the other popular choice was security and penetration testing. So we've got a couple of events in the pipeline, and we'll come on to those shortly, and hopefully that will give us a bit more exposure to the top aspect. And then we need to look at getting some other sessions in for the test techniques and also the likes of the security testing. So if you do have any ideas or you want to get involved in a session, then please do feel free to contact us on Twitter, or if you want to contact myself, I'm available on LinkedIn. Please do feel free to connect. And we are hoping to have a reasonable run of virtual events being organized soon over the next sort of 2, 3, 4 months. We would expect to be able to run one every sort of 4 to 6 weeks, I would say, all being well. And one of the important things to call out is that the Scottish Testing Group is not in competition to other communities such as the Ministry of Testing, Edinburgh and Glasgow groups. We are working very much in a complementary fashion so that we can offer you the most improved and combined and complementary experience rather than all these groups being in competition with each other. We are working very closely with the points of contact for these communities as well. And it's great to have Ali Hill on because he's been very much involved in this over the last year or so. So thanks for joining, Ali, and for all of your help throughout that period. Hopefully next year we will be able to return to these events in person where we'll have them in Glasgow and Edinburgh. I'd be very hopeful that we can do that, but we will endeavour to look at that as soon as possible. We did have a website, scottishtesting.com, that's had a domain issue recently, so we're looking into that and we're hoping to get something available soon. It might not be the same website, it might be slightly different URL, but we'll let you know about that as soon as it's available. And the other thing that we're looking to do in 2021 would be to see if we can obtain any sponsorship. So if you do have any ideas on any of these things, then please do feel free to follow us on Twitter at Scottish Testing, or to connect with myself or Sue or anybody else that's on the call from the panelists if you want to find out more or suggest things. In terms of the next sessions coming up, this was part 1 of the DevOps series. As you've probably noticed, we've got Szilard Széll on today, and he's actually going to be delivering part 2 on the 26th of November at 6 p.m. So I thought it would be a good opportunity for Szilard to tell us a little bit about this session.
Oh, absolutely. Do you want me to share a few slides of the agenda, or just go for the talk?
You can definitely share a few slides. You can just take control of the screen, I believe, Szilard. If you want to start sharing, you're good to go.
If you don't mind that one. So while I'm doing that, hi everyone. I'm Szilard Széll. I'm originally from Hungary. I'm now in Finland. I'm living in Finland, in Helsinki. So talking maybe first about or giving you a little bit of the background. So I will be talking about DevOps challenges specifically in the 5G industry. And this is not only about the 5G industry itself, it's more like how DevOps can be done in an area where you have multiple software suppliers working with you, when your value stream is not so simple that everything is within one company, but it's a giant thing and you are sitting more on the ops side, more on the operations, what expectations you can have towards the suppliers, the software suppliers, and how actually to connect the dev as an organization and ops as another company together into a pipeline. What are the practices and what do we need to do? I'm working for Eficode. This is a consultancy company in the Nordics, quite a big one now, 7 countries, more than 300, almost 400 professionals now. We are focusing on really expertise in DevOps and in transformation, in digital transformation. And the company is focusing, as said, on DevOps transformation. We have a managed service CI/CD platform, quite a big one. Biggest customer is 6,000 developers on this. We're working with all the cloud providers to, provide the operational possibility and deployments. And one of the biggest area of the company is the digital services. For example, UX accessibility laboratory. We have the biggest UX lab in the Nordics. So seeing accessibility as part of the CI/CD pipeline was very nice for me. My goal is to make you a QA advocate, a quality assurance, quality assistant advocate. So I've been working on that. In my free time, Free time, you know that. Like now, I've been working with different testing communities. Actually, I was the president of the Hungarian Testing Board, which was the non-for-profit organization within ISTQB, the International Software Testing and Qualification Board. If you know the ISAB scheme, that became part of the CTFA, the foundation level, certified testing foundation level of the ISTQB. Yep, in that I'm actually working now as member of ISTQB. I am the process working group chair in there. Actually, I've been working with Clive Bates and Jeff Thompson and Mike Smith, and I know, Sue, you have some connections to them. I've been dealing a lot with process improvement mainly and having a lot of knowledge. So I'm an expert level certified expert in test process improvement, Lean Six Sigma, as you see. On the other hand, I'm a Scaled Agile framework teacher as well, and having a lot of knowledge on DASA and SAFe and Scrum, certified Scrum Master, whatever. Also IREP, so the requirement engineering area. So, you know, I'm having a lot of certifications and paper, but I love to meet with people on conferences and really seeing people and teaching and discussing and educating, and of course learning from others. And that's a great opportunity. And that's why I love to be here. In Hungary, we initiated a Test and Tea meetup. And nowadays it has like 3,000 participants, and on a session more than 100 people is participating, like monthly. Every second month there is a session as well. So I believe this is a great thing for you guys to be on this platform and to collaborate with each other and communicate and learn. I hope I can bring a little thing in on the 26th of November. So talking again about the challenges and opportunities of 5G, how that relates to DevOps. I will go through DevOps in a nutshell, a bit more like the high level, talking about acceptance automation, as well as 5G DevOps, and then how the team topology in this multi-company area can be managed, what kind of skills you need. So we will have a nice presentation, and I hope to get a lot of questions there. Well, it's quite late here, so if you didn't understand some of my talk, that maybe I'm just too tired already, but looking forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.
Thanks very much, Sillard. For those of you that haven't already signed up to the event, I've just posted the link into the chat there, so please do feel free to come along. I think it will be a really, really good session. I for one, was fascinated to understand more about how DevOps could be used effectively in a telco environment, having worked in a couple of these, or the development and testing for these, and have traditionally always, in my experience, been delivered through more of a waterfall project management approach. So I think it will be really interesting to see those two things combined, Sillard. So I'm fascinated by it already. You got me at DevOps and 5G without anything else. So there we go. Next, we do also have an event tomorrow, which is running through the Ministry of Testing Edinburgh, and that is an introduction or getting started with chaos engineering, and by a guy called Simon Aronson. Just put a little screenshot of it on there. That's a screenshot from meetup.com. So if you do want to go to that event, you can sign up for free at meetup.com, and you just search for Ministry of Testing Edinburgh, and that will allow you to do that sign up. It promises to be a very good event, and similarly linked to what we've been discussing here, it's another kind of modern practice, chaos engineering. So I think it will be something that will be really interesting to attend. And finally, again, thanks very much for attending tonight. It's great to restart the Scottish testing group and to have a good bit of interaction from the panelists, and also, more importantly, the attendees as well. And we would very much hope to see you again on the 26th of November at 6 p.m. So thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Hi, guys.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.